Autumn in Connecticut painted the streets of Westport in shades of gold and crimson, but for Alexander Moretti, the world remained in shades of gray. His reflection in the office window on the 30th floor revealed a man of 42 who seemed to carry the weight of a century. His once vibrant brown eyes now looked like two empty puddles, and the gray hair at his temples showed the wear and tear of the last 3 years. Moretti Investments was still thriving, but its founder was only a shadow of the man he used to be. The employees had gotten used to his new routine, arriving at 7, leaving at 4, always on time, always distant. On that particular October afternoon, Alexander followed his daily ritual, a solitary walk through the residential neighborhood near the office, a habit Isabella had insisted he keep up in order to clear his mind. Isabella, her name still caused a physical pain in his chest. "Mr. Moretti?" His assistant, Rebecca, called from the door. "The board meeting is confirmed for tomorrow at 9. Alexander nodded without turning around. "Thank you, Rebecca. You can go home now." The sound of her heels moving away echoed down the corridor, leaving him alone again with his thoughts. Wearing his gray wool coat, a present from his last birthday with Isabella, Alexander left the building, soaking in the autumn breeze. Maple Avenue was particularly beautiful at this time of year, with its century-old trees forming a canopy over the sidewalk. It was the kind of street Isabella would love to photograph. Her talent for capturing beauty in the ordinary had been one of the first things that had attracted him. That's when he saw them. At first, he thought he was hallucinating. 4 little girls, all looking about 6, were playing hopscotch on the sidewalk. On any other day, it would have been an ordinary childhood scene, but there was something different, something that made his heart stop for a moment. The first girl, wearing a navy blue dress and a red ribbon in her hair, was jumping with determination, her serious expression identical to the one Isabella made when she was concentrating. The second, wearing a green jumpsuit, had the same gentle smile that had won him over so long ago. The third was adjusting her glasses exactly as Isabella did when she was thinking. And the fourth had that sparkle in her eyes, that spark of life that he thought he would never see again. Alexander stopped, feeling his legs weaken. An elderly woman passing by offered help, concerned about his sudden pallor, but he barely heard her. His eyes were fixed on the girls, who were now watching him curiously. "You shouldn't be alone in the street," he heard himself saying, his voice hoarse with emotion. The bespectacled girl, who had the same brown curls as Isabella, replied with a wisdom beyond her years. "We're not alone. Aunt Teresa is watching us from the balcony." Alexander followed her gaze to a Victorian house across the street. On the balcony, a middle-aged woman watched him with an enigmatic expression. There was something in her eyes that suggested she knew more than she was letting on. "Girls, snack time," Teresa called out, her voice soft but firm. The 4 of them moved in unison, collecting their belongings with a grace that seemed all too familiar. Before they entered, the girl in the navy blue dress turned and smiled. Isabella's smile. Alexander stood motionless, watching them disappear through the front door. His heart was pounding, his mind trying to process what he had witnessed. It was impossible. It had to be impossible. And yet, he remembered Isabella's last months, her long conversations with doctors he had never met, the documents she had carefully kept, her enigmatic words about leaving a legacy. "You'll understand one day, Alex," she had said on their last night together, her weak fingers caressing his face. "Promise me you'll keep your heart open." At that moment, standing on the sidewalk on Maple Avenue, Alexander Moretti felt something he hadn't experienced for 3 years. Hope. A hope mixed with fear, confusion, and an overwhelming urgency to discover the truth. He looked at the Victorian house again, memorizing the number 247. Teresa was still on the balcony, her eyes fixed on him. When their gazes met, she inclined her head slightly, in a gesture that seemed as much a greeting as an invitation. Alexander took a step towards the house, then stopped. Not today. He needed to process what he had seen, to investigate, to understand. But he would come back. He was as sure of that as he had ever been of anything since Isabella's death. As he walked back to the office, his mind whirled with possibilities. For the first time in 3 years, his steps had a purpose, and the world around him was slowly beginning to regain its colors. The mystery of the 4 girls had planted a seed of life in his dead heart, and he knew, with inexplicable certainty, that his life was about to change forever. The night after meeting the girls was the first time in 3 years that Alexander didn't need sleeping pills. His mind, previously tormented by painful memories, was now buzzing with possibilities. Sitting in his private office in the Moretti mansion, he rummaged through old boxes of Isabella's documents, looking for any clue about her latest activities. Among yellowed papers and photographs that still hurt to look at, he found a worn business card, Renaissance Institute, Advanced Biotechnology Research. On the back, a note in Isabella's delicate handwriting, Dr. Lauren Mitchell, Project Essence. The next morning found him parking his black Audi in front of 247 Maple Avenue. The Victorian house looked even more imposing in the daylight, with its tall windows and lace curtains. A discreet sign near the gate read, Hope Home, Children's Shelter. Teresa was waiting for him on the porch, as if she knew he was coming. She wore a simple navy blue dress, and her gray hair was tied up in an elegant bun. Her green eyes conveyed a mixture of caution and understanding. Mr. Moretti, she greeted him, descending the porch steps. I was wondering how long it would be until your visit. Alexander felt a chill. Do you know me? Isabella used to talk about you a lot. Teresa gestured towards the house. Please, come in. We have a lot to talk about. The interior of the house was welcoming, with pastel-colored walls and well-preserved antique furniture. Photographs of smiling children decorated the walls, but Alexander noticed that the four girls didn't appear in any of them. Teresa led him to a living room at the back of the house, where a large window overlooked a well-kept garden. On the lawn, several children were playing under the supervision of a young monitor. The girls are in music class now, Teresa commented, noticing her gaze searching for them. Sophia is extraordinary on the piano, you know, just like Isabella, Alexander added, his voice trembling slightly. Who are they really, Teresa? What's going on here? Teresa poured tea into antique porcelain cups before answering. What do you know about Project Essence? Mr. Moretti. Just the name. I found a card. He paused, studying her expression. Isabella was involved with it, wasn't she? More than involved. Teresa took a sip of tea. She was the heart of the project. But before we go any further, I need to know, why are you here? What do you expect to find? The question caught him off guard. I don't know. Yesterday, when I saw those girls, it was like seeing fragments of her. It's impossible, I know. But nothing is impossible, Mr. Moretti. Isabella believed it. Teresa placed her cup on the table. The girls arrived here 2 years ago, all on the same day. 4 babies left on the doorstep with just one letter and impeccable legal documentation. Alexander leaned forward. A letter? From Isabella. Teresa stood up and walked over to an antique desk. From a locked drawer, she took out a yellowed envelope. She asked that it only be given to you if you found us on your own. With trembling hands, Alexander took the envelope. Isabella's handwriting on the front. To Alex, when the time comes, made his heart squeeze. The girls, he began, but was interrupted by the sound of laughter coming from the corridor. The 4 of them entered the room like a little whirlwind of energy. Aunt Teresa, called Clara, the one in the green overalls, stopping abruptly when she saw Alexander. The other 3 clustered behind her, watching him curiously. Girls, Teresa smiled gently. This is Mr. Moretti. He's come to visit us today. Helena, the one with the glasses, stepped forward. You're the man in the photo. What photo? Alexander asked softly. Sophia, the one in the navy blue dress, ran out of the room and returned seconds later with a picture frame. On it, a photograph that Alexander recognized immediately. Him and Isabella in the botanical garden, 3 months before she fell ill. How? He began, but Teresa interrupted him with a meaningful look. Girls, lunchtime. Why don't you help Miss Claire in the kitchen? After they left, Teresa turned to Alexander. Read the letter first, then we'll talk about the rest. Alexander looked at the envelope in his hands, feeling the weight of Isabella's unread words. They're really... Read the letter, Mr. Moretti, Teresa repeated softly. Some truths need to be discovered at the right time. When Alexander left the home of hope that afternoon, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. The envelope remained closed in his pocket, weighing like lead. In the garden, the girls were playing rounders, their laughter echoing through the quiet street. Amelia, the 4th girl, waved to him from the fence. Her smile, that smile he knew so well, made his heart leap. Alexander waved back, got into his car and drove home. knowing that his life was about to change drastically. Isabella's letter was waiting to be read, holding secrets that could explain the inexplicable. But at that moment, all Alexander could think about was the sparkle in the eyes of those 4 girls, a sparkle he thought he had lost forever 3 years ago. Isabella's letter lay untouched on Alexander's desk. After 3 nights staring at the envelope, he still hadn't found the courage to open it. Instead, he devoted himself to daily visits to the home of hope, observing the girls from afar, trying to understand the mystery they represented. Teresa had agreed to allow him to spend time with the children, as long as he respected their rhythm. That sunny Saturday morning, Alexander arrived earlier than usual, carrying a mysterious box. "Presents?" Teresa asked, arching an eyebrow when she met him on the balcony. "Not exactly," he replied, revealing the contents, a set of paintbrushes and canvases. "Isabella always said that art was the best way to get to know someone." Teresa smiled, a gleam of approval in her eyes. "Sophia loves painting." "Like you?" "Just a hunch," Alexander lied, remembering how the girl in the navy blue dress watched the clouds in the same way that Isabella did before picking up her brushes. In the activity room, the 4 girls were already gathered. Alexander watched them for a moment, noticing how each one occupied the space in a unique way. Sophia, serious and focused, was leafing through an art book. Clara was helping a younger child put together a puzzle, her natural kindness evident in every gesture. Helena methodically organized her crayons, while Amelia danced alone to a song that seemed to exist only in her head. "Good morning, girls," Teresa announced. "Mr. Moretti has brought a special activity for today." The 4 of them raised their eyes simultaneously, a gesture so synchronized that it made Alexander wince. "Can we paint whatever we want?" Sophia asked, her eyes shining at the sight of the materials. "Anything," Alexander replied, handing out the canvases. Sometimes a painting says more than 1,000 words. For the next 2 hours, Alexander watched in fascination as each girl approached the task differently, revealing aspects that he knew so well. Sophia painted with meticulous precision, her tongue clenched between her teeth in concentration, just as Isabella did. Her canvas revealed a sunset over the sea, with impressive detail for someone so young. "Is it a memory?" Alexander asked softly. "A dream," she replied, without taking her eyes off the canvas. "I always dream about the ocean, even though I've never been to the beach." Next to her, Clara was creating a vibrant garden scene, populated by butterflies and small animals. Her strokes were soft and gentle, conveying a sense of peace reminiscent of Isabella's early work. Helena opted for a more abstract composition, with geometric patterns that intertwined in a complex way. "They're like thoughts," she explained, adjusting her glasses. "All connected, but each one unique." Amelia, meanwhile, painted with total abandon, her expressive brushstrokes creating an explosion of color and movement. Her canvas was pure emotion, chaotic and beautiful, just like Isabella's latest works. "You paint like her," Teresa commented quietly next to Alexander. "Like who?" Amelia asked, turning around quickly. Teresa exchanged a quick glance with Alexander before smiling. "Like a born artist." Over lunch, Alexander had the chance to get to know each of them better. Clara had a natural gift for comforting others, rushing to help when one of the younger boys knocked over her juice. Helena showed a voracious intellectual curiosity, asking insightful questions about everything. Sophia maintained an almost adult dignity in her gestures, while Amelia radiated a contagious joy that filled the room. "They're special," Teresa commented when the girls went out to play in the garden, "each in their own way." "They're more than special," Alexander replied, his voice breaking. "They're impossible. The way they move, the way they talk, the way they think. It's as if they were part of her," Teresa added softly. "Maybe it's time to read that letter, Mr. Moretti." Alexander watched the girls through the window. Sophia was now teaching the others to dance ballet, her graceful movements reminding him of Sunday mornings when he found Isabella dancing alone in the living room. "Do they know?" he asked. "About where you come from?" "They know they're different. They know they're here for a special purpose." Teresa paused. "The rest, I believe, is in that letter." That evening, alone in his office, Alexander finally mustered the courage to open the envelope. Isabella's words awaited him, ready to reveal a mystery that he had only just begun to understand. Before he started reading, he looked at the photograph of the girls that Teresa had given him. 4 identical smiles, 4 pairs of eyes that held a secret greater than themselves. In each one, he saw a different reflection of the love he thought he had lost forever. The sun was setting on the horizon, painting the sky with the same colors that Sophia had captured on her canvas. It was time to discover the truth that Isabella had kept for him, the legacy she had left not just in words, but in 4 little hearts that beat with the same essence as hers. With trembling hands, Alexander opened the envelope. The soft scent of lavender, Isabella's signature, still lingered on the paper like a whisper from the past. He unfolded the letter carefully, recognizing the elegant handwriting that had so often comforted him through little notes left on his desk.
My dear Alex, if you're reading this letter, it means you've found my girls. I don't know how long it will take, months, years perhaps, but I always knew that your heart would recognize them, just as it recognized mine in that art gallery so long ago. What I'm about to reveal now will seem impossible, even insane, but I ask you to read to the end with the same open heart that has loved me for all these years. Alexander paused, taking a deep breath.
Memories of that final time flooded his mind. Flashback 3 years earlier. I have to go to the institute today, Isabella said, her face pale but determined. She was thinner, but her eyes retained that indomitable gleam. You should be resting, Alexander protested, adjusting the shawl over her shoulders. There are more important things than rest, my love. She smiled, that smile that always disarmed him. Dr. Mitchell is close to a revolutionary discovery, something that will change everything. What kind of discovery? Something about preserving the human essence, she replied vaguely. Alex, promise that, no matter what, you'll keep your mind open to the impossible. Present. Turning back to the letter, Alexander continued reading. Project Essence began as research into consciousness and cellular memory. Dr. Mitchell discovered that our memories, our essence, are not just in our brain, they are in every cell of our body. But she went further. She found a way to transfer specific aspects of that essence. When I found out about my terminal condition, I didn't fear death, Alex. I feared leaving you alone. I feared that all the love I felt would be lost in the void. It was then that Dr. Mitchell offered me an extraordinary possibility. Alexander paused again, remembering the countless afternoons when Isabella disappeared for experimental treatments. At the time, he assumed they were desperate attempts at a cure. Now he realized it was something much deeper. Through a process that I still don't fully understand, we managed to isolate 4 fundamental aspects of my essence: my passion for art, my empathy for others, my quest for knowledge, and my joy of life. Each of these aspects has been preserved and, through a revolutionary procedure, transferred into donated embryos. Sophia, Clara, Helena, and Amelia are not copies of me, Alex. They're much more than that. They are living proof that love can transcend death itself. Each of them carries a special part of who I was, but they are unique individuals with their own souls and destinies. The office revolved around Alexander. Now he understood the familiar gestures, the impossible coincidences. He continued reading, his hands shaking even more. Teresa is not only the director of the orphanage, she was my confidant throughout the whole process. She promised to protect the girls until you found them. Because, my love, you had to find them for yourself. You had to be ready. I didn't leave this legacy to replace what we lost, but to give you a new reason to move on. These girls will need guidance, protection, and, above all, love. I know you have all that love to give, even if you don't know it yet. But there's something else you need to know. We're not alone in this story. Richard Mitchell, Dr. Lauren's brother and my old classmate, has always been obsessive about the project. He believes that the girls are the property of the Institute. That's why I set up a whole legal system of protection through Teresa. But Richard is persistent and powerful. Protect them, Alex. Not just from Richard, but from anyone who wants to use their extraordinary existence for the wrong purposes. They are more than a scientific experiment. They are proof that love can find ways that science has barely begun to understand. The letter continued, but Alexander had to stop. Tears blurred his vision as pieces of the puzzle fell into place. Isabella's secretive behavior over the last few months, the mysterious documents, the long phone conversations in her private office. He remembered the girls. Sophia with her artistic talent, Clara with her infinite kindness, Helena with her thirst for knowledge, and Amelia with her contagious joy, each one carrying a part of the woman he had loved, but being completely unique in their own existence. The phone rang, startling him. It was Teresa. Mr. Moretti. Her voice was tense. Richard Mitchell is here. He wants to see the girls. Alexander felt an icy chill. The last part of Isabella's letter was still to be read, but there was no time now. The conflict she had predicted was beginning, and he needed to act. I'm on my way, he replied, reaching for his coat. Don't let him be alone with them. Stowing the letter in his safe, Alexander hurried off. The sun had already set, and dark clouds were gathering on the horizon. A storm was approaching, both literally and metaphorically, and he needed to be prepared to protect the last and most precious gift Isabella had left to the world. Chapter 5. The Return of the Shadows. The rain was starting to fall when Alexander arrived at the home of Hope. The black Mercedes parked in front of the house bore a discreet Renaissance Institute sign. Through the illuminated windows, he could see movement in the main room. Before he could reach the balcony, Teresa opened the door. Her normally serene face showed concern. He's in my office, she whispered. The girls are safe upstairs with Claire. Alexander entered, feeling the air heavy with tension. From the corridor, he heard a male voice that emanated authority and impatience. Dr. Mitchell, Teresa announced as they entered the office. This is Alexander Moretti. Richard Mitchell was a tall, elegant man in his mid-50s. His gray eyes, behind thin-framed glasses, studied Alexander with clinical interest. Ah, Isabella's widower, he said, holding out his hand. My sister Lauren used to talk about you a lot. Alexander shook the offered hand, noting the excessively firm grip. Interesting. Isabella never mentioned you. A muscle twitched in Richard's face. Isabella and I had disagreements about the direction of the project. She insisted on adding emotional elements to something that was supposed to be purely scientific. The Essence Project, Alexander said, watching the other's reaction. Richard smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. So you know, I thought Teresa had already revealed everything. Actually, Isabella left a letter. Oh yes, always dramatic. Our Isabella. Richard began to walk around the office. But I'm afraid she hasn't fully grasped the magnitude of what we've created. Those girls aren't just children. They're the greatest scientific discovery of the century. Thunder rumbled in the distance, as if underlining the gravity of the moment. They are children, Teresa intervened firmly. Not laboratory guinea pigs. They're both, Richard retorted. And legally, the Institute has rights over. No, it doesn't. Alexander interrupted him, his voice cutting. I checked the documentation today. Isabella made sure that the girls were legally protected. Richard stopped his walk, turning around slowly. Documents can be contested, Mr. Moretti, especially when they involve unauthorized experimental procedures. Before anyone could reply, a childish scream cut through the air, followed by the sounds of running upstairs. Sophia! Teresa exclaimed, running for the door. The three of them rushed up the stairs. In the hallway, they found Claire trying to calm a crying Sophia, while the other three girls looked on in fright. It was just a bad dream, Claire explained. She fell asleep while reading and… No, Sophia sobbed. It wasn't a nightmare. It was a memory. I remember. Her eyes met Richard's and she cringed, clinging to Claire. The man with the needle, she murmured. Richard paled visibly. Alexander felt his blood run cold, remembering an unread passage from Isabella's letter. What were these memories? What exactly had happened at the Institute? Fascinating, Richard murmured, his eyes shining with scientific interest. Residual memory transfer is a side effect we didn't foresee. Enough. Alexander stepped forward, placing himself between Richard and the girls. Get out of this house now. Mr. Moretti. Richard adjusted his glasses calmly. Don't be hasty. We can reach an agreement. The Institute has unlimited resources. Think what we could find out by studying them properly. By studying them. Alexander felt an icy fury rise in his chest. They're children, not experiments. Isabella entrusted her protection to me, and I intend to honor that trust. Isabella was dying, Richard retorted dismissively. Your decisions were emotional, not rational. They were perfectly rational, Teresa interjected. She knew exactly what you planned to do with the project. That's why she made sure the girls stayed out of your reach. Richard watched the group for a long moment. His gaze passed over each of the girls and who were now hugging each other in a protective circle, before returning to Alexander. This isn't over, Mr. Moretti, he said softly. The Institute has a lot of resources, And more importantly, we have the law on our side. Those girls are the intellectual property of— Out! Alexander's voice thundered down the corridor. Get out before I call the police. For a moment, it looked as if Richard was going to argue. Then, with a cold smile, he tilted his head slightly. As you wish, but I'll see you soon. After his departure, a heavy silence fell over the house. Sophia was still shaking, but now she was in Alexander's arms, who was holding her protectively. We need to talk, Teresa said softly. There's more in Isabella's letter that you need to know, and we need to prepare our legal defense. Alexander nodded, watching the four girls who were now looking at him with a mixture of fear and hope. At that moment, he made a silent promise to Isabella. He would protect her legacy at any cost. The storm was roaring outside, but the real storm had only just begun. Richard Mitchell had resources and determination, but Alexander had something stronger, the love of a father who had just discovered his daughters, and a promise to the woman who had made it all possible. The morning after Richard's visit, Alexander canceled all his appointments at Moretti Investments. There were more urgent matters to deal with, starting with the unread part of Isabella's letter. In his office at the Home of Hope, Teresa served him coffee while he resumed reading. Alex, if Richard shows up, and he will, you need to know the whole truth. The Essence Project didn't start out as something dark. Lauren Mitchell dreamed of helping people with degenerative diseases by preserving their memories and essence. But Richard saw something more, a way of improving humanity by selecting and replicating desirable characteristics. The girls aren't the only ones, Alex. There have been other attempts, other experiments, but something went terribly wrong. Richard crossed ethical and moral boundaries. Lauren tried to stop him. But Dr. Mitchell's car accident wasn't an accident, was it? Alexander asked, raising his eyes to Teresa. Isabella suspected not, Teresa replied softly. That's why she created so many legal protections for the girls. She knew they'd be next. A cheerful shout from the garden interrupted the conversation. Through the window, they could see Helena pushing Amelia on the swing, while Sophia and Clara played hopscotch. The scene seemed so normal, so innocent. How are they after yesterday? Alexander asked. Sophia had another nightmare during the night, Teresa sighed. But something has changed. For the first time, she asked for you. Alexander's heart squeezed. He went back to the letter. Each of the girls carries not only aspects of my essence, but also fragmented memories. Sophia, especially, seems most sensitive to them. Protect her, Alex. She'll see things she shouldn't have to. As if summoned by the words of her letter, Sophia appeared at the office door, her large, serious eyes fixed on Alexander. May I come in? She asked timidly. Of course, dear. Teresa smiled, getting up. I'll check on the others. Alone with Sophia, Alexander felt a wave of emotion as he recognized the familiar gestures, the way she played with the hem of her dress, just like Isabella did when she was nervous. I had another dream, she said softly, but this one was different. It was happy. Do you want to tell me about it? Sophia climbed onto his lap, a gesture so natural that it surprised them both. It was an art gallery. There was a painting of sunflowers, and you were there, younger. Someone was very happy to see you. Alexander closed his eyes, remembering the first time he saw Isabella at the Van Gogh exhibition. She was the assistant curator, and he was there just to impress a client. He ended up impressed by something much more significant. They're not just dreams, are they? Sophia asked, her voice small but wise beyond her years. No, dear. They're memories. Very special memories. In the garden, Clara was now organizing a circus game with the other children from the orphanage, her gentle nature shining through. Helena had found a book and was reading to a smaller group, while Amelia danced alone, lost in her own music. We're different, Sophia continued. Is that why that evil man wants us? Alexander hugged her protectively. Yes, but he won't be able to take them. I promise. Are you going to be our father now? The question took Alexander by surprise. Aunt Teresa said you loved the person from the memories. Isabella, he said softly. Her name was Isabella. And yes, I loved her very much. I still do. Sophia nodded solemnly. Can I show you something? She got off his lap and ran outside, returning moments later with a folder of drawings. Inside were dozens of sketches, all by Isabella. Some showed scenes Alexander recognized. Others were moments he had never seen. I started drawing them after the dreams, Sophia explained. At first I didn't know who it was, but now, Alexander examined the drawings, amazed at the precision of the details. One in particular caught his eye. Isabella in her secret studio, working on a canvas that he never got to see completed. That was from last night's dream, Sophia said. She was painting something important, something about hope. At that moment, the other three girls entered the office, as if sensing that something significant was happening. Helena adjusted her glasses, studying the drawings with academic interest. Clara placed a comforting hand on Sophia's shoulder, while Amelia danced softly around them. "Do you have dreams too?" Alexander asked gently. "Different," Helena replied. "I see books, lots of books, and conversations about important things. I feel more than I see," Clara added. "Like I know exactly when someone needs help. I dance with her," Amelia spun around, smiling. "On Sunday mornings, to classical music." Alexander felt tears well up in his eyes. Each of them carried such a specific part of Isabella, but they were completely their own people. The miracle of what Isabella had achieved hit him full force. Teresa watched from the doorway, a soft smile on her lips. "The bonds are already forming," she commented. That's what Isabella wanted, not just to preserve parts of herself, but to create new connections, new love. Alexander looked at the four girls, his girls now, he realized, and knew that his life would never be the same. Richard Mitchell and his threat still loomed on the horizon, but at that moment, all that mattered were the invisible bonds that were beginning to strengthen, weaving a new family out of the love that Isabella had left as her legacy. The discovery of Isabella's secret atelier came about by chance, a week after Richard's visit. Sophia had mentioned the place in her drawings in such precise detail that Alexander began to suspect it wasn't just a dream. It was an old building, Sophia explained, drawing with chalk on the floor of the balcony, with a faded blue door and a number 23 in bronze. Alexander recognized the description, a set of warehouses converted into art studios in the historic district. Isabella used to rent space there, but he never knew exactly which one. With Teresa looking after the girls, Alexander drove to the place. The owner, an elderly man called Marcus, recognized him immediately. "Mr. Moretti, Isabella used to rent Studio 23 at the back. I've kept everything intact, just as she asked." Alexander's heart raced as he followed Marcus through the corridors. The smell of paint and turpentine brought back sweet and painful memories. "She came here almost every night for the last few months," Marcus commented, unlocking the faded blue door. "Always alone, always late." The studio was exactly as Sophia had designed it. Tall windows, scattered easels, shelves full of paints and brushes. But what caught Alexander's eye was the covered canvas in the center of the space. That was special to her, Marcus said. She worked on it until the end. With trembling hands, Alexander removed the cloth covering the canvas. What he saw made his world stop. It was a portrait. Not just one, but four superimposed. 4 children's faces emerged from an ethereal background, their features blending and separating as if in a dream. It was Sophia, Clara, Helena, and Amelia, painted years before they existed. "My God, Isabella," he whispered. "You saw them. You always knew." Next to the canvas was a diary. Alexander opened it, recognizing the familiar handwriting. "Project Essence, Day 127. Lauren says it's working. The transfers are stable, but there's something else going on. It's not just characteristics being transferred, it's memories, emotions, dreams. Richard wants to speed up the process, use more volunteers. Lauren is worried. So am I." Alexander continued reading, each page revealing more about the project and the growing conflicts between the Mitchell brothers. Day 145. Richard crossed a line today. Lauren discovered that he was using vulnerable women for his experiments, promising money in exchange for donations. When she threatened to report him, "I'm afraid of what he might do." Day 160. Lauren is dead. Car accident, they say, but I know the truth. Richard is taking complete control of the project. I need to protect my girls. They will be different. Not experiments, but a legacy of love. The last entry, dated 3 days before his death, made Alexander sit up, stunned. "My love, if you're reading this, you've found not only the studio, but also the girls. There are documents in the false bottom of the last drawer, proof of what Richard did, of the women he used, of the truth about Lauren's death. Teresa knows how to use them. But more important than the evidence are the girls. They're not just parts of me, Alex. They're proof that love can be stronger than science, than death, than anything. Richard will never understand that. For him, it's just data and results. Take care of them, love them, and remember, in their every smile, in their every gesture, in their every shared dream, I am with you, forever yours, Isabella. Alexander found the false bottom in the documents, detailed records, photos, carefully organized evidence. Isabella had created not only a legacy, but also protection. His phone vibrated. A message from Teresa. Come quickly. Richard is here with lawyers and a court order. Storing the documents in his briefcase, Alexander took one last look at the screen. The girls' faces seemed to stare back at him, full of hope and confidence. I won't let you down, Isabella, he promised the empty room. I won't let them down. When he arrived at the home of hope, he found 2 black cars parked out front. Richard Mitchell stood on the porch with 2 men in suits, while Teresa blocked the entrance. Ah, Mr. Moretti, Richard smiled coldly. Just in time to see justice done. Justice? Alexander climbed the steps calmly, his briefcase heavy with Isabella's evidence. Interesting you should mention that. From upstairs, 4 pairs of eyes watched the scene through the window. Sophia held up a new drawing, this time showing a woman in a white coat, Lauren Mitchell, smiling gently as she explained something about essence and love. Isabella's truth was about to come out, and with it, the final battle for the protection of her precious legacy was about to begin. Teresa's office was transformed into an arena of confrontation. Richard Mitchell, flanked by his lawyers, flashed a smile of superiority as he presented the court order. As you can see, he said, sliding the document across the table, the Renaissance Institute has legal rights over any outcome of Project Essence. That includes the girls. Alexander remained calm, years of corporate negotiations evident in his posture. Interesting choice of words. Richard, outcomes. Is that how you see children? They're more than children, Mr. Moretti. They are living proof of a revolutionary scientific breakthrough. Like your other living proofs? Alexander opened his folder, spreading photographs across the table. Like these women, Richard's smile faltered. The photos showed women in different stages of experiments, all with suffering expressions. Documents detailed payments, threats, coercion. Where? Richard began, his voice trembling slightly. Isabella kept records. Teresa intervened. Of everything. Upstairs, the girls were gathered in Sophia's room. Helena was reading a book aloud, trying to distract the others, but they could all feel the tension emanating from downstairs. He's not taking us, is he? Clara asked, her voice small. Sophia put down her sketchbook, revealing her latest work, a woman in a white coat lying next to a wrecked car. He hurt her, she whispered. The good doctor, Amelia, normally so cheerful, was quiet in a corner, hugging her knees. I see things sometimes too, she confessed. At dances, I see pain, people crying in white rooms. Back in the office, the battle continued. This is ridiculous, one of Richard's lawyers protested. Documents without context have no legal value. No? Alexander smiled coldly. What about depositions? Lauren Mitchell kept a diary too, very detailed. The mention of his sister's name made Richard turn pale. You're bluffing. How did she really die, Richard? Teresa asked softly. A nighttime accident on a deserted road? Interesting how the brakes failed just when she was threatening to expose your illegal experiments. The sound of footsteps on the stairs interrupted the conversation. Sophia entered the office, followed by the other 3. Their small faces were serious, determined. You killed her, Sophia said simply, looking at Richard. She wanted to protect us, like Isabella. Richard stood up abruptly. That's absurd. They're just confused children, mixing up dreams with, they're not dreams, Helena intervened, adjusting her glasses. They're memories. Dr. Mitchell showed us the files. All the women you hurt. Clara approached Alexander, holding his hand. Some of them are still alive. We can find them. Impossible, Richard whispered, but his face had lost all color. Amelia began to hum softly, the same song that Lauren used to play in her laboratory. She liked this song, she said. She used to play it while she worked. Before you changed everything, Alexander watched the girls with admiration. They weren't just fragments of Isabella. They were extraordinary beings, united by a purpose greater than themselves. Your court order is based on false premises, he told Richard. The Institute has no rights over the girls because the original project was corrupted. Lauren never approved its modifications, and Isabella ensured that all the legal documentation was reviewed before her death. Teresa opened a folder of her own. In addition, we have these guardianship papers signed by Isabella, appointing Alexander as the girl's legal guardian in the event of her death. Completely legal and irrevocable. Richard looked at his lawyers, who were studying the documents with worried expressions. It doesn't end here, he threatened. It does, Alexander replied firmly. Unless you want this evidence, all of it, to reach the press. I imagine your investors would be fascinated to discover the true nature of your research. The silence that followed was deafening. The girls stood together, their small but powerful presences filling the room. Finally, Richard stood up. You don't understand what you're wasting. The scientific potential. We understand perfectly, Teresa interrupted him. We understand that some discoveries should not be made at the expense of humanity. After Richard and his lawyers left, Alexander gathered the girls in a tight hug. Each of them trembled slightly, but their eyes shone with relief and something else, pride. How did you know? He asked softly. About Lauren, about everything. The memories are becoming clearer, Sophia explained. It's as if we were all connected, not just with Isabella, but with all of them. We're a different kind of family, Helena added thoughtfully, connected by something stronger than blood. Teresa watched the scene with tears in her eyes. Isabella knew, she said. She knew that together they would be stronger. Not just parts of her, but something entirely new and special. Alexander looked at the four girls, his daughters now, truly his, and felt a wave of love and protection so strong that it almost knocked him over. Richard Mitchell had been defeated, but he knew that this was just one battle in a bigger war. The world was not ready to understand the miracle that these children represented. For now, this would have to remain their precious secret, a legacy of love, science, and hope, protected by the love of a father and the eternal memory of two extraordinary women. Autumn gave way to winter, and with the first snow came a sense of normality that Alexander had never imagined possible. The girls had moved into the Moretti mansion, although they spent much of their time at the home of hope with Teresa, who had become a constant presence in their lives. On that particular December morning, Alexander watched from his office window as Sophia painted the snowy landscape. Clara helped the gardener with the winter plants, Helena read under a defoliated tree, and Amelia tried to capture dancing snowflakes. They're adapting well, Teresa commented, coming in with 2 cups of coffee. But there's something we need to discuss. Alexander recognized the tone. It was the same one Isabella used when she had difficult news. What is it? Teresa put an envelope on the table. I received this yesterday. It's from Dr. Patricia Chen, a former colleague of Lauren Mitchell's. Inside the envelope was a detailed medical report. Alexander felt his heart squeeze as he read it. The transfer of memories and characteristics is intensifying. The girls aren't just remembering, they're experiencing. The brain patterns indicate a growing synchronization, something that has never been documented before. What does that mean? He asked, although he was afraid of the answer. It means that they are becoming more connected, Teresa explained softly. Not just with Isabella's memories, but with each other. It's as if they were developing a collective consciousness. In the garden, as if to illustrate the point, the 4 girls suddenly stopped their activities and looked in the same direction. Sophia began to draw frantically, while Helena closed her eyes, concentrating. It's happening now, Clara said, entering the office with snow on her boots. We see a room. There are people. More survivors, Amelia added, following her.
Like us. Sophia and Helena joined them, bringing the newly made drawing. It showed a medical facility where several girls, all looking like the 4 of them, were hooked up to machines. Richard hasn't given up, Helena explained, her voice trembling slightly. He has others, like us, but something's wrong with them. Alexander examined the drawing, noting the disturbing details, empty expressions, lifeless eyes.
Where is that? We don't know exactly, Sophia replied. But we can feel them. They're scared. Alone. Teresa picked up the drawing, studying it carefully. There's a logo here in the corner. It looks like, yes, it's Nova Vita Medical Research, a subsidiary of the Renaissance Institute, Alexander muttered. Richard is continuing the experiments through another company. We need to help them, Clara insisted, her eyes brimming with tears. They're like us, but they haven't had love, only pain. Alexander felt the weight of the decision on his shoulders. Helping would mean exposing his girls, putting them at risk, but ignoring the suffering of other children. Isabella would have gone, Amelia said softly, as if reading his thoughts. She always helped those in need. A new report arrived in Teresa's hands, this time even more worrying. The neural connection between the girls is strengthening exponentially. Soon, they may develop abilities beyond our comprehension, but there's a price. The stronger the connection, the greater the risk of sensory overload. We need to find a way to stabilize the process before... Before what? Alexander demanded. But Teresa just shook her head sadly. We're getting stronger, Helena explained, but also more vulnerable. Every new connection, every shared memory. It brings us closer to the edge, Sophia added. But we can't abandon the others. They're part of us now. Alexander looked at his daughters, because that's how he saw them now, regardless of how they came into the world. Each of them carried not only a part of Isabella, but also a strength of their own, a determination that haunted him. If we're going to do this, he finally said, we need to be smart. Richard has resources, influence, and we have the truth, Teresa interrupted, and something more powerful than money or influence. We have love. The girls came together in a spontaneous embrace, their connection almost palpable in the air. Alexander could feel, everyone could, the energy flowing between them. The power of Isabella's love multiplied and transformed into something new and extraordinary. We're going to need help, he said, already formulating a plan. Contacts in the media, in the legal system, and doctors who understand what's happening to them, Teresa added. Dr. Chen can help, and I have other contacts who were loyal to Lauren. Sophia began another drawing, this time showing a larger group of girls, all holding hands, forming a circle of light. In the center, a figure that looked like Isabella was smiling. She always knew, Clara said softly, that there weren't just four of us, that there were more. And now it's our turn to complete what she started, Helena concluded. Alexander looked out of the window, where the snow continued to fall softly. The price of love, he realized, was not just protecting what you already had, but being willing to risk everything to extend that protection to others who needed it. The girls stood by the window, their small silhouettes outlined against the winter light. United, strong, determined. Isabella's legacy was about to expand in ways no one could have predicted, and the price would be high. But love, Alexander knew now, was always worth the cost. Nova Vita Medical Research occupied a modern complex on the outskirts of Boston. Beneath the glass and steel facade, Alexander knew, lay dark secrets that needed to come to light. The plan had been meticulously drawn up over the course of a month. Dr. Chen had provided blueprints of the building and access codes. Teresa had mobilized a network of former institute employees willing to testify, and the girls had prepared in the only way they could. It's time, Sophia said, adjusting the small communication device in her ear. Beside her, her sisters did the same. Alexander felt his heart squeeze. You don't have to come in, we can... Yes, we do, Helena interrupted him gently. They're calling us. Stronger and stronger. In the back of the surveillance van, monitors showed different angles of the complex. Teresa was coordinating with a team of strategically placed investigative journalists. Everything was ready. Remember, Alexander said, hugging each of the girls. At the first sign of danger, we know, Dad. Clara smiled. The word, Dad, still new and precious to them, but it'll be all right. Isabella is with us. The girls entered through the service entrance, guided by the shared memories they had received from the others. Alexander and Teresa watched through the cameras. Tense. Basement, east wing, Sophia whispered into the communicator. We can feel them. The sterile corridors seemed endless. Around every corner, the girls moved with an eerie synchrony, as if they were dancing a rehearsed choreography. Amelia, always the most intuitive, led the way. Finally, they reached a double door marked Restricted area. Renaissance to 2 project. Through the glass, they saw what their dreams had already shown them. 12 girls, all aged between 6 and 7, connected to monitoring machines. My God, Teresa whispered into the communicator. They're all parts of her, Helena added, but broken, alone. Before they could act, a familiar voice cut through the silence. Impressive, isn't it? Richard Mitchell emerged from the shadows, followed by 2 security guards. I knew you'd come. The connection is stronger than we anticipated. What did you do with them? Sophia demanded, her voice carrying an authority beyond her years. Did I? I gave them purpose. I continued the work that Isabella and Lauren were too weak to complete. Richard smiled coldly. But you're different. Stronger. More complete. Because we had love, Clara said simply. Something you never understood. Richard made a dismissive gesture. Love is chemistry, nothing more. What we have here is pure science. Directed evolution. Wrong, Amelia snapped. What you have is prison. Torture. The girls formed a circle, holding hands. Through the cameras, Alexander and Teresa watched helplessly as a strange energy began to fill the corridor. What are you doing? Richard demanded, his confidence wavering for the first time. What Isabella taught us, Helena replied. Sharing love. A soft light emanated from the circle, expanding until it reached the room where the other girls were. One by one, they began to awaken, their empty eyes coming to life. Stop! Richard shouted, stepping forward. You'll ruin years of research. But it was too late. The 12 girls in the room, now awake, began to move in sync with the 4. The machines fired off alerts, monitors flashing frantically. Now! Teresa shouted into the communicator. The doors to the complex opened, ushering in police officers, journalists, and a medical team led by Dr. Chen. Richard tried to flee, but was detained. Richard Mitchell, a detective announced, you are under arrest for illegal experimentation on minors. First-degree murder of Lauren Mitchell. Alexander ran underground, his heart threatening to explode. He found his girls still holding hands, exhausted but smiling. It worked, Sophia whispered. They're waking up. Dr. Chen coordinated the rescue of the other girls, each one being carefully disconnected and examined. It's incredible, she murmured. Their brain patterns are stabilizing. Because they're not alone anymore, Clara explained, leaning on Alexander. Richard, handcuffed, stared at the scene with a mixture of anger and incredulity. You don't understand what you've done. The lost potential. We understand perfectly, Helena replied. We understand that some discoveries are only possible through love. Amelia began to hum softly, the same song that Lauren had been playing in her laboratory. One by one, the other rescued girls joined in, creating a harmony that filled the barren corridor with life. Isabella would be proud, Teresa said, tears in her eyes. Alexander hugged his daughters, watching the other girls being cared for. The nightmare was over, but he knew that the journey had only just begun. 16 girls, all carrying fragments of Isabella, all needing love and guidance. Shall we take them home? Sophia asked, sleepily. Yes, Alexander replied, his heart expanding to accommodate more love than he ever thought possible. Let's all go home. Outside, the first light of morning touched the horizon, promising a new beginning. Isabella's legacy was complete, not just in memories and characteristics, but in the love she had created, multiplied and transformed into something greater than she herself could ever have imagined. The Moretti mansion had never seemed so alive. In the months that followed the rescue, its ancient walls witnessed an extraordinary transformation. What was once a silent house steeped in painful memories became a vibrant home filled with laughter, music, and the sound of 16 pairs of tiny feet. Alexander converted the entire east wing into dormitories, each room decorated according to the girls' emerging personalities. Teresa moved into the back annex, officially becoming the housekeeper and unofficially a second mother figure to them all. On that particular spring morning, the garden was especially busy. It was the opening day of the Butterfly Project, an initiative set up by Alexander and Dr. Chen to study and support children with special abilities. Dad, Sophia called out from the balcony, where she was organizing an art exhibition. Lucy's having another vision. Lucy was one of the rescued girls, who demonstrated an extraordinary ability to predict future events through her paintings. Alexander rushed over to her, finding her in a trance in front of a blank canvas. With quick, precise strokes, Lucy began to reveal an image. A woman in a garden of sunflowers, her face radiant with joy. It was Isabella, but not as in the photographs or memories. It was Isabella as she might have been, as she might still be, somewhere beyond their comprehension. "She's happy," Lucy whispered, coming out of her trance. "She sees what we've created here." Helena, who was nearby organizing the mobile library for the event, adjusted her glasses. "The connections are stronger today. We can all feel it." Dr. Chen, who had arrived for the event, watched in fascination. Her studies on the girls had revolutionized scientific understanding of consciousness and cellular memory. "It's extraordinary," she commented to Alexander. "Each of them has developed unique aspects of the original abilities. They're not just copies, they're evolutions." It was true. In addition to the original 4, each of the 12 rescued girls manifested talents and abilities of their own. Emma could heal minor injuries with a touch. Sarah had a special connection with animals. Julia could see mathematical patterns in everything. "Love did it," Teresa said, joining them. Not Richard's science, but Isabella's love. She knew that together they would be stronger. The garden began to fill with guests, families with special children, ethical researchers, selected journalists. The Butterfly Project would be a sanctuary for those who, like the girls, needed a safe place to flourish. Clara, always the most empathetic, coordinated the reception of visitors. "There's a girl over there," she whispered to Alexander. "She's just like us." Alexander followed her gaze to a shy little girl holding her foster mother's hand. Her eyes had that familiar sparkle, the same one he saw in his daughters. "One more?" Teresa asked softly. "There are others," Amelia confirmed, dancing up to them. "We can feel them. Some don't know what they are yet." Alexander watched his 16 daughters because that's how he saw them now. All of them, interacting with the visitors. Each one shone in their own way, sharing their gifts with kindness and wisdom beyond their years. "Isabella knew this would happen," Sophia said, approaching with a new drawing. "We weren't the end of the experiment, we were the beginning of something bigger." The drawing showed them all, 16 small lights forming a larger constellation, and all around, other lights were beginning to appear, like stars emerging in the twilight. "The Butterfly Project isn't just for us," Helena explained. "It's for all of them to come." Dr. Chen took notes furiously. "The ability to identify others like them. It's a completely new development." "It's not science," Clara corrected gently. "It's family." Alexander felt his heart expand with pride and love. Isabella's legacy had become something much bigger than anyone could have predicted. It was no longer just about preserving memories or characteristics. It was about creating a network of love and support that would continue to grow. In the center of the garden, the 16 girls gathered spontaneously. A soft song began, the same one Lauren used to play, the same one they all now knew by heart. One by one, they began to dance, their shadows merging in the golden afternoon light. "That's how she sees us now," Lucy said dreamily. "Like a dance. Like light." Teresa wiped away a tear. "Like love in motion." Alexander watched the scene, feeling Isabella's presence more strongly than ever. Not in the memories or the familiar gestures, but in the love that kept growing, multiplying, finding new ways to exist. The Butterfly Project was just the beginning. Somewhere, other little lights were waiting to be found, other dances were waiting to be danced. And here, in this garden transformed by love, 16 little guardians of an extraordinary legacy were showing the world that some miracles don't need to be explained, only lived, shared, and celebrated. Spring was blooming around them, promising new beginnings, new discoveries, new loves. And at the center of it all, Isabella's heart kept beating, multiplied by 16, expanding to embrace a future she had dreamed of, but which was only now truly beginning to awaken. A year after the Butterfly Project opened, the Moretti Mansion had become a true center of hope. What began with 16 special girls was now home to a growing community of children with extraordinary gifts. That summer morning, Alexander found Sophia in her art studio, completely absorbed in a new series of paintings. The canvases, arranged in a circle, told a story that made his heart race. "They're the next ones, aren't they?" he asked softly. Sophia nodded, without taking her eyes off her work. They're coming, Dad. Closer every day. The paintings showed children, not just girls this time, each emanating a different kind of light. Helena, who was cataloging her sister's visions, approached with her inseparable tablet. We've identified 23 so far, she reported, adjusting her glasses. Some seem to be indirect results of Project Essence, children of women who took part in Richard's first experiments. Dr. Chen, who now ran the scientific division of the Butterfly Project, entered the studio carrying new reports. The manifestations are evolving, she explained. It's not just memories or transferred characteristics. It's as if the DNA itself is adapting. It's love, Clara said simply, entering with a tray of tea. It's changing everything. In the garden, Amelia was leading a dance class for a group of newly arrived children. Her ability to help others find their inner music, as she called it, had become a valuable tool in the adaptation of the new residents. The frequency of the visions is increasing, Teresa observed, joining them in the studio. They all sense that something big is coming. Lucy, who was spending more and more time in a state of creative trance, began a new drawing. It showed the Moretti mansion, but transformed, expanded, as if it were growing organically to accommodate more light. It's the next step, she explained, her eyes still distant. The Institute needs to grow. They'll be coming from everywhere now. Alexander sat down, feeling the weight of responsibility. The Butterfly Project had already grown beyond his initial expectations. But this was something even bigger. Isabella knew, Sophia said, finally putting down her brushes. It wasn't just about us, or about preserving her essence. It was about initiating a change. An evolution, Helena added, guided by love rather than cold science. Dr. Chen was fascinated. Their ability to connect and influence others. It's as if they're creating a new form of collective consciousness. Not just consciousness, Clara corrected. Family. A family that keeps growing. At that moment, one of the new children, a boy called Marcus, ran into the studio. There's someone else coming, he announced excitedly. I can feel it. The original 16 sisters looked at each other, all feeling the same thing. It was like a wave of energy running through the estate. A call impossible to ignore. 3, Lucy whispered, her eyes closed. In an orphanage in Seattle. Brothers. And there are others awakening, Sophia added, already starting a new painting. It's as if Isabella had planted seeds that are only now beginning to blossom. Alexander looked at his daughters, all of them. Not just the original 16, but every child they had taken in over the last year. Each one shone with their own light. But together they formed something bigger, more beautiful and more powerful than anyone could have imagined. We need to prepare, Teresa said pragmatically. If more are coming, we're already prepared, Helena interrupted with a smile. Isabella has prepared everything. The company funds, the adjacent properties. She saw that, Lucy confirmed. Not exactly like that, but she saw the potential. Love multiplying. Alexander picked up his phone, already planning his next moves. Expansion of the campus, more specialized teachers, new dormitories. But he stopped when he felt Sophia's small hand in his. Don't worry so much, Dad, she smiled. Love finds a way. It always has. In the garden, Amelia started a new song, one that no one had heard before, but that everyone seemed to know. One by one, the children joined in, each adding their own harmony to the growing melody. This is how it will be, Lucy said softly, sketching the unfolding scene, each bringing their own gift, their own light. And together we are the future that Isabella dreamed of, Helena added. Alexander looked up at the summer sky, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. What had begun as a story of loss and love had turned into something much greater, a story of evolution, of hope, of a future where the extraordinary not only existed, but flourished. In the studio, Sophia's paintings continued to tell the story that had only just begun, and in every stroke, in every color, in every new light that lit up on the horizon, Isabella's love continued to grow, to transform, and to create miracles that not even she could have foreseen. It was only the beginning. If you could preserve a single characteristic of yours for the future, something that could positively impact generations to come, what would it be, and why? Leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to our channel and leave a comment below. letting us know what you thought. Your feedback and support mean a lot to us. Stay tuned for more exciting stories.